Step 6, different from all the other steps. It's a mystery. Why? Because the verb is were. It's a state of being verb. It's the first one on here that's a state of being verb. Every other one was an action verb. Admitted, came, made, did, sought, tried to carry, were. What's really hard here, especially for Americans who like action kind of things, it's very hard to know when we're actually in a state of being. This state that we're looking for is a state of readiness. In fact, it's an entire readiness. It's really hard for us to know when we're in a state. It's hard for us to know if we're being a good person or a bad person. It's really hard for us to know if we're gay or straight. It's really hard for us to know if we're being helpful or if we're not. It's hard for us to know sometimes who we are, the essence of who we are. Isn't our life search for about who we are? To find that state of being, it's hard. That's what makes this step particularly hard, especially for Americans who like action. So, for Americans who like action, let me give you a metaphor. Americans like action, so we're going to put this state of being thing into an action metaphor. Joe Montana and Jerry Rice. Joe Montana was quarterback for the 49ers. He would take the hike, he'd drop back to pass, and he'd throw it to Jerry Rice. Now, we are Jerry Rice. We're not Joe Montana. In this metaphor, Joe Montana happens to be God. That's fine. He's not God, but we know that. Okay. So Jerry Rice, this is what we do. We get in Jerry Rice's shoes. Now, Jerry Rice would go off for the pass and run his route. He didn't always get the ball thrown to him. All he did was he went out there and he became entirely ready to receive that pass. Entirely ready to receive that gift of that ball being passed to him from Joe Montana. That is what we do. We have to do our daily route and be entirely ready to have that pass thrown to us, because the action in this step of removing is done by God. God is the one that removes all these defects of character. What defects of character? All these things right here that we did in step 4. That was our character that made us do bad things. That is your step 6, defects of character. Now, let me say this about defects. I want you to think of it in these terms. A defect is an incompletion or an imperfection. We're not perfect. We're just trying to be better. So it's just those parts of us that are incomplete and imperfect. I'm going to give another analogy. In the Christian Bible, in the New Testament, there's a Greek word, hamartia, that is the exact same, and that's a word for sin. That's the exact same word that archers use, bow and arrow, archers. In the old days, they used to have a bale of hay that was tight with a white skin, and there was a red dot in the middle about the size of a man's heart. And archers would shoot at it, and if they hit the red dot, it was perfect. If they didn't hit the red dot, it was imperfect. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. Those things that we do here on the planet, they're either perfect or they're imperfect. And every imperfection, and we all know we have a bunch of them, we take care of the biggest ones first, the ones that make us feel the most guilty. And as I've gone on in my 24 years of sobriety, I've done step 4 4 or 5 times. I had to do it on being late. I had to do it on my driving habits. So sometimes we do a big step 4, but in general, we get rid of as much stuff as we can the first time around, and then we move on to other completions. We move on to other perfections, asking God to remove the incompletions and imperfections so that He's the one completing us, so that He's the one perfecting us. That's what step 6 is all about. We already have the list right here. all those things that I am, that are bad, that are wrong, those things are the things that God removes. So that's the end of step 6. Don't stop there. Go on to step 7. If you want to get a hold of us, go to contacts on theclearviewcenter.com.